All right, I think we're going to get started here. So thank you one and all for coming to join us at the Connecticut Pota Activators group. I'm Sean, KC1NQE, and I'm joined with Conrad, N2YCH, and Peter, K1PCN. The three of us together, we kind of came together as a love for Pota, the parks on the air. And it kind of had a interesting start because myself and then Conrad, we were the first two to complete all of the parks in Connecticut. And Conrad actually looked me up, reached out, and said, "Hey, we love this program. Let's do something a little bit more for Connecticut." And you can go to the next slide. And basically, we're going to go through the birth of the Pota Activator group, our kind of humble beginnings, and where we are at now. We're not at our peak. We're not even halfway up to the rise there. There's a lot of adventures to be had, and looking at all your faces in here, we'll see you out in the parks pretty soon. So, next slide. Basic background on Parks on the Air, and if you've attended some of the other talks about Pota, we had Brian N1BAM giving a talk, and then we had Harold in the room here just prior. KB1J gave a talk on how to be a hunter. So, go to the next slide there. Yep, next slide. All right, so we actually started off back in 2000, and it was with Don Izzo, W1FYG, that kind of just said, anybody out in the Connecticut area, come down to Hamxpo. We're going to have a show and tell. We had maybe about 15 different people there with all different stations setting up, and it was a great show and tell. And then we can go to the next slide. So basically with the burgeoning of the Pota group, like I said, it started off as myself, Conrad, Peter. My background, basically, I became a ham in 2000. Started looking at how to become a ham in 2019. I had come across a YouTube video. It was an individual activating the ISS. And I thought that was the craziest, coolest thing ever. And I'm like, how can I do that? And then I learned about ham radio. And then I remembered way back when I was probably about 14 years old, my scoutmaster, he was a ham. And he had us doing convoys and stuff on the events, the scouting events. And that kind of planted the seed. And then later on, I had joined the military, and I was a medic with the infantry, and didn't have enough stuff to carry, so they told me carry a radio as well. Basically, I was the only one that knew how to turn it on. And had a lot of fun with that. And then, again, fast forward into, now I can bring stuff out into the woods. I can bring toys with me to the woods. And that was one of the best things. I also consider myself to be an urban hermit. Don't go out too much and everything else. As you see me now, this is kind of temporary. I was hurt during work, and I'll be up and running around in the parks again pretty soon. But that's been the joy. As most of you know, when you turn on that radio and you start hearing those call signs, everything else, all those troubles out in the world, they just fade away, and all you're hearing is just the list of call signs and the friendly voices. And that's another thing here. It's like looking around here and knowing that I've talked to most of you on the radio and seeing you here is a great thing. You can go to the next slide. So starting off, it kind of started off as one, Don getting people together saying, hey, this is Pota, this is a cool event, what do you think? Then it kind of turned into a club activity. I'm part of the Meriden Amateur Radio Club, and we got just people together at a local park, and we went around in a round robin. We just had our HTs, 2 meters, 70 centimeters, and we went around in a circle, and everybody activated. So it was a great activity for a club to do, to bring everybody together, not at the clubhouse, and not at a major function, but we got out and we had a ton of fun. And then we started doing the Support Your Parks weekend and kind of making it a quarterly event. So every 3 months, 4 times a year, we have the Support Your Parks event where we go out and we've started turning it into a potluck dinner or a lunch rather, doing some barbecuing out there and working the radio waves. You can go on to the next slide. So it kind of expanded from, we were meeting at various different parks, and we've kind of settled on Wharton Brook State Park, which is right in the middle of the state in North Haven, Wallingford line. Easy on and off from 91, exit 13. We've been getting hams from all over the state. We've actually had quite a few out-of-state hams driving up from Pennsylvania, DC area, down from Massachusetts, and it's been an absolute blast going along. And next slide. So one thing that we love about the Pota operations, one, it's field operations, and you have a plethora of things you can do out there. You can do your sideband work, FM work, satellite work, CW, FT8, whatever your flavor may be. Pota has something for everybody, and Conrad's going to go in a little bit more later on about how we've organized this onto our group's IO. Next slide, please. Oh, actually, one thing on the last slide that I forgot to mention is that through our club, one of our members, NZ1J, Dave Tipping, got Logbook of the World and the Pota site to actually recognize the sub-millimeter band. And if you're not sure what the sub-millimeter band is actually one of the bands that we're allowed to use as an amateur radio operator. You do need to write into your local communications. So for the state of Connecticut, it's pretty easy. You just call up the FCOM and they kind of sign off on you for your area. And that's working on the terahertz band. So you're working with lasers at that point. It's pretty neat. We did the 2 meter circle up, and then like I said, for your club, it's easy as just standing in a circle. Put an HT in everybody's hand and getting on the air. And it's very simple to get an activation that way. All you need is 10 in the log. So if you got 3 friends, a park, and a radio, you got that all covered there. Next slide. We have been growing over the years. We've been kind of doing this for 2.5 years now of getting people out to the parks, getting different clubs, and we're not a club. We're just a group of individuals that love Pota as a whole. So anybody in Connecticut, you're more than welcome to join and participate. And we have a nice repository of information that's been growing. We got pictures, we got videos, and again, Conrad will describe a lot more of that. Going forward, we are trying to develop a lot of our resources so that way individuals that are just coming into the radio hobby or getting into Pota, a lot more resources than what the Pota site has to offer. And we've been noticing that a lot of other states have been picking up with their own similar programs. And hopefully, maybe in a couple of years, once ours is developed and everybody else's, we'll have a nationwide program where it'll give you a lot more in-depth information, a lot more hands-on. You're able to upload information about the park. That way, the next activator that goes to the park will be able to see what you've done and maybe mimic it, do something slightly different, make it their own. Okay, next one. And Pota is a year time thing. You could be out there spring, winter, fall, summer. You can see us there. It's our different events. The one in the winter, that was darn cold. Even getting people out to take the picture there, we were quickly jumping back into the heated box that we had. And then this is myself and KC1 MEB Silent Key at this point. She was my kind of main person that we would go out activating together. This is on Mini Island. It's a small island in the middle of Garner Lake, and it's the smallest state park in all of Connecticut. So the first time that we activated this, we did it in February. It was cold and it was icy, and we walked across the ice. So we actually got an award from the islands on the air crew because they've had people skydive to islands, they've had people boat to islands, they've even had people submarine to islands, but they have never had anybody walk to an island. So we can do next slide, please. Here, this is us at the Wharton Brook, and we got N2YCH and KC1ISI Kristen, who's also a club member, and we're setting up for one of our Parks on the Air Support Your Parks weekend. Good. And this is our potlucks. So like I said, it's evolved over time, and this is something that you can bring back to your clubs. It doesn't have to be a huge club sanctioned or ARRL sanctioned event. Get a group of friends together, start something. It's about getting out into the nature, about being out there, supporting your parks, being a good steward of ham radio, and being a good steward of our parks. And yeah, we get to bring out some of our toys too, as you can see over the left shoulder there. Forget KB1 TBL. Absolutely brilliant. Put together this comm shack that he got from the military, picked it up fairly cheap from what he says, and had a lot of fun with it, turning it into a mobile go box. And then it's basically, like I said, bringing about clubs together, or bringing the people within your clubs together. Okay. And then, yeah, always evolving and bringing stuff in for next year, for expanding upon the ideas of what we can, and I don't ever want to say what we can't do, what we can figure out how to do better next time. Okay.
That's it.
Yep. And I'm going to pass it over to Conrad.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mic'd up. All right. Hi, I'm Conrad, N2YCH from Trumbull, Connecticut. And what Sean mentioned earlier is that he has completed all of the parks in the state of Connecticut, 149 of them. And I was on the same path, and there were 4 parks that are island-only parks that you can't get to unless you're in a boat. So I was like, how in the heck did anybody do that? And I looked it up, and sure enough, he'd already been there. So I emailed him, and I was like, tell me how you did it. And he's like, we walked across the ice. Well, in the summertime, that doesn't work. But we made contact that way. And then Peter, to my right here, president of the Greater Bridgeport Amateur Radio Club, and I met on a Pota club event that G-Bark was holding. And so, you know, the 3 of us found ourselves out and doing Pota quite a bit. So if you hit the next one. So what we did was at one of the last photos that Sean showed, we had done this Support Your Parks weekend. We did the Park to Park net, which I thought was just brilliant, where we were all on 40 meters, all at different parks, and we all made contact with each other at different parks. So similar to that 2 meter, 70 centimeter circle, we were all out there, and it gave us the ability to do, to get the park to park credit within the state. And then as we were out there, we were activating the state and making it available to anybody that needed Connecticut as one of the worked all states. So we sort of looked at some of the other people who were doing this. Georgia Wisconsin, Florida, Rhode Island, Hawaii, they all were doing coordination of, we're going to be out this weekend, and they would sort of announce it on the various social media channels to let people know. Hawaii especially is difficult to get, so here we are, at the Support Your Parks weekend, and we're like, how do we organize this? So at the Dayton Hamvention, we actually, Peter and I cornered Jason Johnson, who's the head of Parks on the Air. He's the lead guy, and suggested this whole QSO party idea. And he was like, "You guys should run with it." So next slide. So the next challenge was, how do we communicate this to people? Not everybody has Facebook. Some people are on Discord. Some people are on what used to be Twitter, Slack, Blue Sky. So we next slide. We picked a platform to work with, and we added a Groups.io group. So you can do this for free. Up to a certain point, with a certain number of members, you have your own Groups.io for free, but it has limited functionality. But the nice thing about Groups.io is that all you need is a web browser and an email, and you can communicate through this. So it's essentially an email reflector. You send a message up, and the email will get out to whoever's a member, and they have the choice as to how often they want to be bothered by the emails, whether it's immediately or once a day or once a week or whatever. So, or never if they don't want to, and they can go and look at it themselves. So, and then you can also go to the web page and just bring up the address, and you can see all of the content there. Next slide. So there's many ham-related groups that are already up on Groups.io. 13 Colonies, we have a group there. Buddy Pole has a group. W1AW, when they were doing the activation last year, they had a group. Ellicraft, G-Bark. So this was a good sort of place where a lot of people already had accounts, that we thought, it's just adding one more to what already exists. This was my page, by the way. So next slide. So we created the home page for Connecticut Parks on the Air Activators group. We put some sort of basic guidelines up there for what the expectation was, and to be respectful of each other, and how we wanted to share information and things like that. So next slide. This is a screenshot of the message board. So the left-hand bar gives you all of the menu options of whether you want to see photos or look at messages or look at Wikipedia stuff and all of that. So this also allowed us to do a pinned message. So if you went up to this message board, and we were going to be doing the next Support Your Parks weekend, we would pin that up there, so it would make it easy for people to find the information out about where we were going to be, or what the activities were going to be, or the potluck, or whatever. So next slide. The other thing that we are using as a feature of Groups.io is their hashtag capability. And here you can see, this was before they changed all the parks from Ks to USs. We had all the parks listed by the actual park number, and then the park description is below it. And if any message goes up there about a particular place, we can tag it with the hashtag, so that then for the next person that wants to find out any information about that particular park, they can just click the hashtag and it'll bring up all of the messages about that park. So next slide. So here this is one of the features that is, you have to pay the subscription for it, but basically we put a photo repository up there. Again, you can see that each one is labeled by the park number. So Nepog State Forest K10075 is up there. You can click on that square tile, and it'll bring you into the photo album for that particular park. And we thought that this was a good way for us to create the repository of what do you expect to find when you go out there. So Brian talked about this earlier on his presentation, where you use Google Maps and Street Maps and various Google Earth and a number of other things. But for Connecticut, we thought if we can take photos while we're out activating, post them up here at the particular park that we're at, that the next person that comes along has the ability to quickly see what's there and what to expect. So next slide. So we create the groups IO, and then it's like, okay, how are we going to let people know that it's there, and sort of spread the word. So one of the things that I learned quickly was that word travels fast in the ham radio community. Once you start talking to people about things, it goes from club to club and from person to person. One of the things we did was we went to the Connecticut parks on the Pota site and looked at who was the most active at a particular park. So if you have somebody that has a kilo at a park where they've made 1,000 contacts, they're a regular there. So chances are they're a regular Pota activator. So we figured that if we emailed that person, which you can usually find their email through QRZ, then say, hey, by the way, we've got this Connecticut Activators group, you should join it. That we sent out invitations that way. We let the heads of all of the various clubs, G-Bark I mentioned, WARA, which is my club, Woodmont Amateur Radio, Mark and the Meriden, and then word traveled that way. We contacted the state ARRL representative, who was at the time Bud Kozloff, W1SK. We let him know, so he let, I think he was a member of CARA, which is up in the Danbury area, so he let his group know. And then we contacted the state Pota representative, so the guy that's in charge of all of the maps and the parks that get added to the Pota site, to let him know, so that as he's communicating with people that he could say, oh, by the way, in Connecticut we have this Activators group. He's in the group, so he sees the traffic and the email going through it. And then after one of the more recent Support Your Parks weekends that we had, I actually wrote up a short article about it and submitted it to the New England division, and they posted it up on the website. So another way for us to get the word out to people. Next slide. That's a screenshot of the article that we had published. So next slide. So then we took it up one more level. So I am the QSL manager for K2D, which is the special event call sign for the 13 colonies for the state of Connecticut. And every July 1st through the 7th, K2D gets used. It's associated with our state as the special event sign that you want to try to get if you're getting all 13 colonies. So I had emailed the head of 13 colonies for our state. His name is Pete Shamalayan. And I said, do you think it would be okay if we used K2D to do the Support Your Parks weekend special event? So he was like, yeah, sure, go ahead. And we ended up emailing the one by one, the people that are sort of the keepers of all the one by one call signs, and assigned them out. And they allowed us to use it for each of the Support Your Parks weekends. As Sean mentioned, there's 4 of them. And so now we can go out and activate all those parks, but we can also activate it under this one by one call, which definitely gets people's attention, and it makes it even more special. So we did that. I created a K2D Pota account in the Pota website. And so all of our activators, when they go out and activate as K2D, send the logs to me, and then I upload them to the Pota account. And while K2D is getting the credit for those activations, we make sure that each operator's call sign is in the operator field. And what happens is it automatically populates the operator who's out there, their website, their web page on the Pota.app site. So Brian, for example, would operate as K2D, but so that would be the station call sign, and then the operator would be N1BAM. I upload it, and then his page will reflect that he's actually done that activation. So it's kind of like you almost get 2 for 1 out of it. So that worked, and then as I mentioned, I reserved it for all 4 of the weekends, and was approved right away. So next slide. So this is a shot of the actual Pota site for our page. And you can see we have a bunch of awards there. But one of the things I wanted to point out on this is that right here, you can see that we have other call signs. And what we did was we created K2D/R1, K2D/R2, all the way up to 20. And what that does is what we call the rover code to our operators. And when they go out, they're still operating as K2. They're logging K2D, but when we upload their log to the site, the rover code gives them it gives them the specific park that they're at, and it doesn't collide with it's not like you have more than one call sign out there. It's basically making it an individual call sign for each one. The other thing is that, and we ran into this at one of the earlier ones we did, Peter and I, where we were all out as W1 BPT, and the spotting page fights itself. It's like, okay, so I'm on as W1 BPT digital, he's on his sideband, somebody else is on his CW. It doesn't know which one to pick, so it keeps defaulting to one. So by adding those other call signs and assigning the codes, when Brian goes out to whatever park he's going to be at, he spots himself as R2 or R4.
I usually end up
R4.
Yeah.
So that basically prevents the collision, but it does create a little bit of confusion for the Pota hunters. And Harold talked about the hunters right before us. They see a whole bunch of K2Ds on the page. They're like, "What the heck is going on here?" But and then they're also a little bit confused about whether they should log it as K2D/R2. We try to make it clear that that's not the case, that it should be just the K2D, but and then that's how we upload it to the site.
Park to park should not add the R2.
Correct. Yep.
When we do park to park, everybody uses their individual call sign and then that's
So you can run the next slide, Peter. So just to make it even more fun, we created a QSL card. Randy Dorman, who's I saw his cards on one of the tables out here. I don't know if he's in the show or not, but he's the guy behind all of the 13 colonies cards. If you've ever gotten a card from one of the 13 colonies, so they've all been pretty much designed and printed by him. We asked him to help us create one for Connecticut Parks on the Air. And all of the photos that you see there are all original photos, so that we didn't end up getting yelled at by somebody that we stole a photo off the internet or something. So, as we're out taking pictures, we have this archive of photos, and we put a bunch of them on the card. And on the flip side of the card, which I didn't take a screenshot of, I should have, it actually has the Support Your Parks weekends for the winter, spring, summer, fall. And when people QSL with us, we can just click which one it is, so the same card can be used for all 4 weekends of the events. I think that might be it. One more? Nope, up to you. So I'm going to give you the microphone. Thank you for listening.
All right, thank you. My name is Peter Semino, K1PCN, and I'm going to talk about the evolution of the Pota setup. You should all do Pota. It will make you all better hams. Next slide. All right, so one of the mottos of Pota is, it's field day every day. And yes, it is. Field day, you're not operating in your shack, you're going out to a remote location, you're bringing your radio with you. It is all in the spirit of it. But I would like to better say, it's not field day every day. It's a DX expedition. It isn't just, usually field day is a group activity. You're going to a location that you've activated many times before. You're going to have a big setup. You're going to bring big radios. This, especially if you're trying to activate new parks, it'll be a new park every time. So this requires a little research before you're going. You've got to figure out how to get your stuff there, timing, many different things. The third thing is it's a great way to promote ham radio. You're going out to a park. It's a very public display of radio. People are going to come over and ask on the the Parks on the Air Facebook page in the file section. They have an excellent brochure that you can download. It's a trifold. I have a few of them in my bag. If someone comes over, which always will, It's nice to hand out, and it'll spark. And so many times you hear it, oh, my grandfather was in ham radio, I would like to get into it. And if you are a part of a local radio club, it's a great way to spark interest in that. It's a low-cost training for new hams. You don't need a big property. You don't need big antennas. You're using this wonderful public resource that we have. Now the radios have dramatically come down in price, so anybody can get into this. If you look at how many technicians convert to become general, it's less than 10%. And it's one thing to get a license to run an HT. It's a big step up to run a portable station. If you're doing parks on the air, it's not that big. It drives innovation in the community. Look at, if I think 20 years ago, if you were shopping for an antenna, you were looking for a Cushcraft or something from MFJ. Now there's a plethora of little companies making small QRP and QRO antennas for parks on the air, as demonstrated out here in our booths. And then, as I said, it makes hams better. Next. Okay, so without Parks on the Air, we talk a lot about activators, but really it's the hunters that make Parks on the Air great. You can sit at home and go to your spotting page and see who is where and try to make a QSO. I've seen a dramatic increase in the amount of hunters over the last few years. Here in the East Coast, we're so fortunate. I will go out to any park, anytime, 5 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, and within 2 minutes of spotting myself, I'll have a pileup. If you go out 5 o'clock in the morning, that pileup is going to be hunters from Europe. If you go out later on in the evening, late, you'll get a lot of California stations. It is really wonderful. I had the opportunity to fly to Europe. I went to Sweden, some newer parks, never been activated before. At a time that would have been like 3 o'clock in the morning here, I spotted myself, and I had as many enthusiastic European hunters looking for me as I do here. It has become a worldwide phenomenon. Next page. What do you have to do as a hunter? Nothing. You just have to hunt. You don't need to log. You don't need to do anything. You just log your normal log as you normally do. But all the requirements for logging is on the activator. And but what's genius about the Pota website, it keeps statistics on everything. If you made a you hunted a park, and that activator uploads the log, you'll get credit for it, and you are always a sliver away from some other award. And it'll crunch the numbers, how many states you've hunted, how many states you've activated, how many times you've made contacts with certain activators. It is really a fantastic website. If you haven't signed up for Parks on the Air, do it today, because I guarantee if you've made any park contacts previously, the website is there waiting for you to give you your awards. There are people who have signed up and found that they had contacts up to 5 years ago that the website holds. Next. Now, as it's coming back, it's field day every day. As a new ham, my first introduction to field experiences is really through clubs. And as I said, it is big radios, big amps, big antennas, a 2-hour setup, 3-hour teardown. That's really not what Parks on the Air is. Next. And I went into my first park activation with this mentality. I thought of every situation. I had every contingencies planned with me. I had a truckload of stuff with me. I went out to a park. I set up an 80-meter off-center fed dipole. Why? I don't know why, in the middle of the day, with 3 supports. I set up my station. I found a nice park bench under a tree. And what happened to me? I found that the coax I had wasn't long enough. But fortunately, I had another piece of coax, but I didn't have a barrel connector. So that didn't help me. So I ended up moving the park table about 35 feet out from underneath the tree into the sun, where when I started activating, I couldn't read my computer because the sunlight was too strong. I was accosted by mosquitoes, and I learned the hard way what I need to bring the next time. Next. And it's really this: a barrel connector, a bottle of mosquito repellent, and a umbrella. overall, I had a 5-hour activation. I made like 20 contacts, and I was happy to get out of there when I finally did. Next. Now, this is my current kit. It fits into a little necessaire bag. It weighs less than 10 pounds. A small radio. It's a 20 watt. This is the FX4CR. I have a 4 amp hour battery. I have a small carbon fiber pole, and I run an NFED half wave. That is the K6 ARK 49 to 1 balun, which is you make yourself around a BNC connector. It's resonant on up to 40 meters so 10, 15, 20, and 40. Great little set to have with you. And as you progress, you're going to really see what you need to have with you, what is necessary, what is not necessary, and it's going to get lighter and lighter. Next. One last thing. If you like flying with your radios, N1BAM Brian had some excellent information earlier, but a trick is, one, you should know you can't pack a lithium-ion battery in your luggage. You have to carry that onto the plane with you. On the other hand, if you have an antenna, you really can't carry that on the plane with you. You have to check that in. And now many airlines are getting tougher on weight of your carry-on baggage. If you come there with a big backpack with your big radio and it looks heavy, they're going to ask you to weigh it and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, it has to be less than 8 pounds." A nice trick is that's the only time you'll be asked to weigh your bag. So you take your battery out and you stick it in your pocket, and then as soon as you're weighed, you stick it back in. The other trick is you buy a CPAP bag. If any of you have obstructive sleep apnea, you are allowed to bring medical devices with you on the plane. So if you have the bag with a little hose in it, you can pack your radio if it's small enough and your battery in it, and that is not counted against you for travel. So, and then if they ask you, what do you need this battery for? You say, "Oh, I'm going camping. I need my CPAP." Great. All right. So what do you need to do before you activate? Check your maps, and your boundaries. Maybe it's a twofer. If it's a park and there's a stream by it, and that stream is also a site, or if there's a trail, you have to be within 100 feet of the trail, you can get a multiple park activation. Check the weather. I can activate through rain, I can activate through snow, but I won't activate in lightning, and wind is usually the biggest factor for me. Check your space weather. If it's a X-class flare and you're planning on running QRP, you might want to pick another day. Check for contests. I was going to do a 15-park road at the National Mall in Washington, D.C. You have about 18 parks within walking distance of each other, and there are multiple furs for all of them. But I ended up going on the ARRL sideband contest weekend, and I was expecting I was going to just find a spot in 20. No way. Fortunately, I had the ability to run on 17, which saved the day. And as I said, always have it that should be able to run on 17 as a backup. Check the Pota scheduled activation page. Now, you are not required to do this. Most of the time, I'll go to a park and just spot myself when I'm there. But if there's a chance at the park, there's no cell phone service, or you won't be able to make a contact to be able to spot yourself, and you're doing FT8 or you're doing CW, you can go to the activation page prior, say, I'm going to be at this park between 8 and 10, probably on 40 meters, and as soon as you start calling CQ, either with FT8 or with CW, the reverse beacon network will hear you and will spot you. Which is a fantastic alternative. Yes, if you're doing sideband, there is other ways to spot yourself. We were talking about the soda mate earlier, but I usually will find somebody who has a pileup. I'll make a contact, and I say, "Oh, by the way, everybody, I'm going to be 3 kilohertz down. Please come down and get me. And if you can spot me, that'd be great." And there's always some hunter that will come down, make the QSO, and spot for me. So easy peasy. And then also check the park's website. You can get some information from the park's website. But what is better if you had your own IO page, either a Massachusetts IO page or come to our Connecticut IO page, if you're coming to Connecticut, we have descriptions of most of the parks in the state. And that will give you good information. If you're going to do a DX expedition, yes, you're going to do your research, you're going to look at maps, you're going to look at things, but you're probably going to talk to somebody who was there before you. And that is probably the best information you're going to get. Next. We're fortunate here in the Northeast, we have parks everywhere. As you look through, Connecticut has 145 parks at this time. The one thing you should know is those dots on the map are not necessarily exactly where the park is. You'll click on it, but maybe it's a wildlife management area that has several divisions or a larger area. So you do need to do some research before you go. Next. In our case, we each, if you click on the dot, it'll bring you to this page where you'll have a very brief description. You'll be able to see who activated before. This is Windsor Meadow State Park. And here, easy access, good amount of parking, popular boat launch on the Connecticut River. Park is well kept, although recommended you have someone with you when you visit. And that was a very descriptive thing. When I went there for the first time,
Somebody with a gun.
Exactly. Exactly.
You want to buy your drugs? Excellent spot to go.
Exactly. It was like a gang hangout. It was like late into the evening. There were people there, and I'm like, okay, so I made my 10 and I got out of there.
Collect enough empties there to pay for your gas.
Right, exactly. So use this also as a resource. Next. Okay, talking about this Connecticut Pota group, you want information before going to the parks. We have created this page where you can click on the links, as Conrad alluded to earlier, and very good descriptions. And people say, hey, this park, this is a high noise park. Bring headphones. Or don't go during this time. Or there's a power transformer right over here. Don't do it. Or the parking lot, you can activate the parking lot, but there's power lines all over the place. Knowing what you're getting in for before you get there is key. Next. Parks vary greatly. We all imagine the park we're going to go to is like this first park here. Beautiful, nice open park bench, shaded area, nobody around. You can put out your antenna how you will, but parks can be like this. This is a Christian church, cathedral in Montreal, and this is a National Historic Site, and this is what you have to work with. That little wall and that flower bed right there. So knowing what you're getting into, or some parks are busier. Here, I look on Google's map, nice open green spaces. I pick out the spot that I'm going to, and you come there, and that that park is wall-to-wall people. You have to have contingency plans for everything. This is an e-com drill every time you go out. You're setting up, you're tearing down. You have to make it work somehow to activate the park. Next. And this shows us here. This was one day in the day whenever the eclipse occurred. The day before, Conrad and I went to the top of Killington Mountain. We had to have a small kit. We took the lift up, but there was still a walk to the top. There was snow on the ground. The very next day, we went to another park in Vermont for the eclipse, and you can see how dramatically the situation was from one side to another. This other park didn't really have a lot of park benches. I brought my own little fold-up one and used a dipole. We had a great time. Next. Here is if you want a small footprint, a vertical is the way to go. It's self-supporting. You don't need to use a tree. You don't have to worry about if you're allowed to use trees or not. This ultimate small case, a small Gabriel antenna with a 12-foot counterpoise. It's adjustable up to 20 meters easy. Some parks, you don't really have anywhere to go. So being able to run it from your car, here's a car with a ham stick on top, great alternative. That park in Montreal, this was the setup. If you look there on the wall, I had my little antenna. I have a 12-foot tape measure out, and I was sat right there on the bench right next to it, made my contacts great. This last picture it's next to the Washington Monument in Washington, D.C. If you're going to do that, spike And a 17-foot vertical is the way to go with some counterpoises on the ground. You know what's great about these 17-foot verticals? If you're more than 60 yards away, you can't even see them. You know, so eventually I had the Capitol Police come up behind me and like, did you catch anything? And I'm like, what? Oh, like, we've been looking, like, you're more than 100 feet away from the river. That's kind of far to fish. Like, okay, now I'm doing this activation. They were fine with it. And they, you know, it's become very popular to activate them all. And they said, you know, tell your friends not to bring their stuff in ammo cans. Like, okay, good advice. Next slide. Be prepared for all contingencies. I'll pick up my daughter from the airport in Newark Airport. This is Liberty State Park, the windiest park in America, I have to say. It's great because I can set up there, and from the time she lands, I can pack up and drive over there by the time she's gotten her bag and walking out. Every time I go there, it's like 50-mile-an-hour winds. I am not able to put a 17-foot vertical up there. It'll blow over. I put a spike mount with a ham stick on it, and I make do. The next one is from our activation at the top of Killington Pink. And just think, you know, we're going into winter. It's going to be snow on the ground. There's no trees up there. It's a big rock pile. Conrad bought the perfect antenna for this situation. It was an Elecraft AX1 on a little tripod mount and a little bit of a counterpoise. Made our contacts, had loads of fun. So having the right tool for the right situation is key, and knowing what you're getting into is key. Next. Parks of the Air is excellent for promoting ham radio. If you have a club or a club call sign, you can go to the park. If your club call sign is registered with Pota, set up, and you can rotate your operators. You know, you'll put, in our case, Whiskey 1 Bravo Papa Tango, our club call sign in the club call sign section. We'll upload it to that site in the end. But each activator, if they do 10 contacts, will get credit. But it's also a great way to introduce new hams to it. So if you're a technician, they can be the operator. We'll upload the log. That information will sit on the Pota website until someday when they come and upgrade to general and then sign up for their Parks on the Air account. They will get the credit for it also. They're never called. They're under supervision, so they have the privileges at that time of whatever, whoever the Whiskey 1 Bravo Papa Tango, which is me, I'm an extra, is registered to. And they're never calling their own call sign on the air. They're only using the Whiskey 1 Bravo Papa Tango. Next. As an activator, what do you need? There isn't a lot of information that you have to upload. It's really call sign, club call sign if you're using one, date, time, park, band, and mode. That's really it. There are many great softwares to help you with this. Hammers, for example, free, as we spoke about. I think that's the best one for sideband if you're using a Windows computer. It's free for that case. There's a paid version if you're using it on iPhone or Android. What's nice about it is that it immediately looks up the hunter's name and state and populates it. So I'll make a QSO. I'll say K1PCN, or I'll say N2YCH Conrad, and by adding in that second identifier, we'll continue with the QSO. Sometimes if I typed it in wrong, I'll get someone else's name, and they'll say, "Oh no, I'm not Conrad, I'm Rob," and I go, "Oh, what's your call sign again?" Oh, and I found out that I transverted something, or I typed in something wrong. So great. Polo, if you're using an Android or iPhone, it is fantastic. You can spot from the app. You can do twofers. There's so many different features of it. I think for a tablet or a phone, that's what I'm using. N3 FJP. Perfect. I use that for if I'm going to do Parks in the Air with FT8. These first two app programs do not have rig control. So it is nice having rig control, especially with Android and automatic logging. And the ultimate would be N1MM. It has so many features. You could set it up many different ways, but it is the most difficult to use. You have to have experience with it. So, but if you are a contester, that's fine to use also. Next, safety, the last thing. You want this to be safe. We haven't really had any incidents throughout the country that I'm aware of. One, mark your cords and your coax. I have little pieces of red tape on the coax that I've typed all the way across. There's a company, I forgot the name of it, Italian company that makes orange colored coax. You don't want someone to trip. Messi and Poloni, correct, yeah. And but the thing for me is I lay out my coax. I will always have someone come drive over it. They'll come with their mountain bike or their golf cart or whatever. I want to avoid that. And then the other thing is keep your antennas in front of you. You should see your antenna the entire time, especially Pota activators love end-fed half waves. Just remember, it's really high voltages at the end there, so you don't want anybody to touch it or touch the wire on that end. So mark it, keep your eye on it. If you see anybody getting close, don't transmit. And the one thing, when you're doing ham radio, it's like honey for flies. People are going to come and look at you. They're going to have their dogs on the leash, and the dog's going to be running around like crazy. It's going to knock over your guys and things like that. So, be safe. We don't want any accidents. All right, next. Any questions? Anything I can answer for you? So we have some time over.
When's the next event?
So, October. So we do our Support Your Parks weekends. We usually meet then, and you are all welcome.
I have a question. When you're logging,
Yes.
I like the paper. I don't have that many activations, but I like the paper log and then put the stuff in after.
Excellent question. So what's...
The question is when you go to put the time in, when you start the activation and you put in a time, can you leave that time for the whole time you're out there, or does it have to keep changing?
You have to be within 15 minutes.
Okay.
So within 15 minutes. But if you like paper logging, you can go to the Parks on the Air website, to their logging page, not use any software at all, and input your logs manually. And that's great. If you're doing like 10 or 15 QSOs, easy to do. Yes, if you are doing more QSOs, then it becomes another job. It's just better to have a software and do it right on the spot. But an excellent question. Go ahead, sir.
Is anybody doing 10 meters? A technician can do SSB on 10 meters or 6 meters.
Yes. So that is my plan. So we have our technicians. I introduce them to Parks on the Air. I usually invite one out to come with me. They get hooked. Then we talk about what they can do. Usually technicians will first be proficient with single sideband. But very quickly, if you only have 10 meters that you're going to activate with, and you don't know CW, then FT8 is the way to go. And we have two technicians in our club that are very active FT8 10-meter users. It's super frustrating for them, and it's an excellent motivator for them to study for their general. Any other questions? No, I thank you for your time.
Thank you.